Iranian troops are fighting for Iran and the civilized world. American troops are fighting for Israel and the Epstein class. In order to balkanize Iran, in order to separate the old rich sections, Trump needs to overthrow the Iranian government. This is colonialism, 19th century colonialism in 21st century. Progressive people in Western countries know what happened in Iran in 1953. They know that there was a coup in 1953, but they don't realize we had another coup in 2026. If Iran falls, then Turkey will be next, Saudi Arabia will be next, Pakistan.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today. We have someone very special. We have Dr. Foad Izadi, who is a professor of world studies at University of Tehran, specializing in international relations and public diplomacy. Professor Izadi, it's an honor to have you. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak to us. Can I start by asking, how are you? How's your family? And how are things right now in Iran?
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be with you. We had 3-4 rounds of bombings today. We have lost more than 2,000 civilians. We are getting civilian infrastructure attacked, more than 250 hospitals, schools, electricity facilities, banks, all civilian infrastructure. And on the first day, we had this attack on a school, a girls' school, primary school. We lost more than 165 little girls. That day, I have 2 daughters in a school. So on the first day, the school closed, so I had to go and get my daughters from school. The parents of the 165 girls were not so fortunate to do the same.
Yeah.
They got the bodies of their children. So the situation is very difficult. Thank God we still have electricity. Trump has threatened to attack more electricity grids and bridges. He is saying that within 24 hours he will destroy all electricity grids.
Well, this is what he threatened today. He's given up to Tuesday, so it's Tuesday today. So what's the situation? How would you react? How is everyone reacting to this?
We have some family members calling us, telling us to get some water, store some water, because if electricity goes out, then these water facilities will shut down. So people are very concerned. So I don't know if you have been under bombardment, but it's not a good feeling.
Yeah. In terms of just going back what you've just said, Al Jazeera reported that over 30 universities were attacked. We know that bridges, like you said, hospitals and schools were bombed. How has this affected the average Iranian people?
Of course, I teach at University of Tehran. So the university closed on the first day. We are doing online classes. In fact, today, my daughter schools are doing online. So today they hit near the school of my daughter. So you could hear that the teacher was talking to students. This is primary school. And then you heard the bombing. The teacher was very good. He explained what's going on. And universities are closed. So when they attack these sites, they're destroying buildings. We have some administrators who go for their routine Students are not there, professors are not there, but some administrative staff, they need to go to the
So do they
university.
have shelters, like for the students? Do they have shelters?
No, there are no shelters. Of course, in Tehran, we have this extensive, I think in UK you call it underground, the metro system.
Yeah.
So people could go there, but it is when these planes come, you just hear, and then you hear bombing. So there is no time to go anywhere, basically. Even if there are no shelters, except with the exception of these metro system, but there's no time to go to shelter because we don't have this system of knowing these planes coming ahead of time, and so we just hear the planes and then we hear the bombings.
Okay. What about, like, if you look at Israel, they've got a lot of shelters. So every time, a bomb is dropped, they are warned. So there's nothing like that.
And of course, there is a difference. The missiles that Iran doesn't have these jets that Israelis have. Israelis got their jets from the Americans. They didn't build them. But Iran, to defend itself, they are using missiles, ballistic missiles. And the distance is over 1,000 kilometers. And they have this monitoring system to realize a missile is coming. And they have some minutes before the missile reaches its target. And so there is that difference, that they have some time on their hand. Iranian missiles are directed at non-civilian areas. Some of these missiles are intercepted, and the debris falls in places that the Iranian authorities did not intend. But that is the result of debris that are falling, and you cannot control where the debris falls. But there is this difference that they're using. Generally, they're not using ballistic missiles. They don't.
Yeah. Why are they?
If you have jets, it's easier to hit.
Yeah, why are they targeting university schools, hospitals?
They are trying to repeat their experience in Gaza. On the first week of the genocide in Gaza, Netanyahu called Palestinians Amalek.
Yeah.
And on the first week of their attacks on Iran, Netanyahu called Iranians Amalek. In fact, Al Jazeera had a report comparing Netanyahu's speech in English when he talks about Iranians and what he says when he's speaking in Hebrew. So when he speaks in Hebrew on the first week, he was visiting a military base in Israel, and he called Iranians Amalek. That's the terminology they use in their twisted ideology. If they label a nation Amalek, they get to kill the women and children of that nation. Of course, this is not in the Old Testament. These are it is in the Old Testament, but these are, our belief is that these are passages that were entered with, these are wrong.
Well, it gives them the green light to go and just bomb everything, isn't it?
Exactly. And they want to create terror. It's a terrorist state. So they hit every school in Gaza. They hit every hospital in Gaza, and every university in Gaza, without exception. So they are repeating the same experience. And they think that this was a successful strategy in Gaza. They are trying to repeat that strategy in Iran.
Okay, so do you see this war as part of a broader pattern of U.S. intervention in this region?
Yeah, they are interested in Greater Israel. Netanyahu has talked about that. The U.S. Ambassador to Israel has talked about that. Greater Israel means Saudi territory, Iraqi territory, Syrian territory, Jordanian territory, Lebanese territory, Egyptian territory. And they have already gotten some Syrian and Lebanese territory. This is the aim they have. The aim is to create a hegemony for Israel in the Middle East. so the Americans can plunder the oil more. They are plundering a lot of resources already. They want Iran's oil. This is not an analysis of an Iranian professor. This is what Trump talks about every day, saying that he wants to take Iranian oil. Speaking to this British newspaper, Financial Times, the other day, he wants to take the oil. He's not shy about it.
He's not hiding anything.
He is not hiding anything. This is colonialism, 19th century colonialism in 21st century. And they ask him about Iranian borders. He wants to change Iranian borders. Their basic plan is to separate the oil-rich sections of Iran, create a country there, new country, put a puppet government there, and plunder the oil. That would, Trump thinks, would solve some of these economic problems the U.S. has. He says that he wants to make a lot of money because he's a businessman. This is what he said.
You've just mentioned something. The Kurdish, are they funding the Kurdish separatists, or what's the situation? We're not really clear on that because there's a lot of conflicting news.
Yes, they are. They have been funding. The Kurds are the original Persians. They are. It's an ancient civilization. The Iranian Kurds like their country like any other Iranian. We had some Kurdish elements in Iraq that have been funded by the CIA for many years. This is nothing new. You watch CNN every year. CNN sends a crew to the CIA-funded Kurdish groups. These are terrorist organizations. And they do a report every year. And Trump acknowledged that U.S. has been funding these people. And the plan they had was, in order to balkanize Iran, in order to separate the oil-rich sections, Trump needs to overthrow the Iranian government. And he thought he can do that. In fact, he has said that he thought the war would be over in 3 days. So we experienced the war in June. Then we experienced this coup attempt in January. Some people who watch Western news outlets think that we had protests. Yesterday, Trump acknowledged that he sent weapons to these people. In English, if a person shoots at police with weapons that he has gotten from the United States, in English, they don't call that person a protester. They call that person a police shooter or a cop killer.
That's right, yeah.
But they wanted to create this image that Iran is suppressing its citizens. In the State of Union address, Trump said that the Iranian government killed 32,000 people. This was a month ago. And then he said that it's 45,000. Yesterday, it's 60,000. He's just increasing that number and the real number is we lost over 200 police officers. This was a coup attempt. Sometimes we wonder progressive people in Western countries know what happened in Iran in 1953. They know that there was a coup in 1953, but they don't realize we had another coup in 2000.
Yeah, so Trump administration keeps changing, like what you said. They keep changing the tactics. In where one day he gives 48 hours, the next day he gives 5 days. Whilst sending ground troops. So I think he's talking about ground troops. Very confusing for us. How is Iran responding to this? What's his strategy?
His strategy, his ultimate goal, and he's going to be president for the next 3 years. If he finishes his term. I think he's going to be impeached in January of 2027. But if he finishes his term, he has 3 more years left. And the strategy is to disintegrate Iran, take over the whole Middle East, create Israeli hegemony, use that hegemony to put pressure on countries like China, independent BRICS countries that are in need of the oil from this part of the world. They don't have leverage against countries like China. They want to plunder resources here, create leverage for U.S. against countries like China, push independent countries around with the leverage that they have. The other day, he said that he wants to he wants to establish a toll system in the Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah.
The reporter asked him, Iran is planning to do that, and he said that since we are the victors of the war, we are going to establish a toll system. So they have all these plans. The only problem he has is that the plans are not going according to what they thought they can do. They thought they can overthrow the Iranian government in 3 days and go, move forward with these plans, disintegrate Iran, have some of these terrorist organizations come in, disintegrate the country. So the reason he's changing is because the original plan is not really working out. So he comes up with new ideas, new things. Yesterday he called Iranians animals because they asked him, wouldn't attacking electricity grids and bridges, wouldn't that be a war crime? And he said no, because they're animals. This is the history of colonialism. They have to dehumanize the other side. One thing they did with these so-called protests was to dehumanize and basically create an image of devil out of Iran, so they have an excuse to attack Iran.
He's getting quite desperate now, isn't he? I mean, recently the tweet that he sent out, where he used very foul language, and then at the end he says, Inshallah, praise be to God. Yeah, which is really mocking the religion of Islam. Do you think? So they are obviously he's quite desperate
and Islamophobic. They don't like Muslims. He has this obsession with this Muslim lady with hijab as a U.S. congressman. Miss Omar. He criticizes her whenever he has a chance. We are dealing with the Epstein class, and they don't like Muslims. These people like to kill little Iranian girls and rape little American girls. And in Islam, you don't get to do these two things. So that's why they hate Islam.
So does Iran realistically have the capability to sustain and potentially win this conflict?
It's very difficult. U.S. spends 100 times more on its military in comparison to Iran. And then you have the Israelis that get all their money and weapons from the United States. Two nuclear regimes attacking a non-nuclear state. So when the other day Iranians managed to shoot down a fighter jet, every night we have millions of people coming to the streets shouting against Trump, shouting against Netanyahu. The night that the jet was shot down, the numbers increased very much, with more enthusiasm. This is Iranian technology. Iran has been under sanctions for 47 years, so we are not ordering weapons from US or UK companies. They're building it internally with domestic technology. And they're shooting down planes that were not supposed to be shot down. So this creates a high level of self-confidence. It is, if you put these numbers on paper, Iran should not be able to win. But Iran is fighting back for more than a month with all these bombings and pressures. It shows some level of planning. It shows a high level of dedication. Iranian troops are fighting for Iran and the civilized world. American troops are fighting for Israel and the Epstein class. So that makes a difference. Although their military is much stronger, that morality.
Well, let me tell you something. The Muslim community in UK, they are fully behind Iran and the Muslim world, and we can see
because they belong to the civilized world. You don't have to be a Muslim. You don't have to be a Muslim to realize what's going on. But we are glad that
the media or the narrative is changing here, even with the non-Muslims. We can see that the narrative is changing. Just wanted to quickly ask you, in terms of the pilot, did they manage to capture the pilot, or is this is something that what the U.S. administration is saying that they've rescued the pilot? Is that true?
I don't know. You saw all the footage of the American planes. Trump yesterday claimed that they were bombed by Americans because they were old planes. So why would you want to use old planes when you're engaging in this very serious operation? The belief here is that all the planes they had, all the military equipment they brought, was designed to find the enriched uranium that Iran still has, and that was a failed mission. And instead of acknowledging the mission failed and the Iranians shut down some of their planes, they're coming with this story that we were trying to get the second pilot. We don't know. They haven't shown the pilot. We don't know if he's alive or not.
Are you expecting that they will change their story very soon? Because that's what they've been doing.
What we know from history is that the initial report that you get out of Secretary of War or the Pentagon generally changes. That's what has happened historically. With this one, I don't know. But overall, when Iranians see the planes that are totally destroyed on Iranian soil, what Iranians believe is that they were shut down. They don't believe the Trump story that the U.S. bombed its own planes because they were old. So they're not buying that story.
Okay. Just to understand the regional dynamics, how do you see this war connecting to the wider Israel-Palestine conflict?
The Americans have been telling Iranian officials that if you reduce your support for the Palestinian cause, they know this is an Islamic republic. They're not going to forget about the Palestinian cause. They just need reduction. Like other Muslim countries. We have some Muslim countries who are paying lip service to the Palestinian cause, saying good things about Palestinians, criticizing Israel occasionally, and then they have extensive economic linkage with Israel. The fuel for Israeli planes that were bombing Gaza mostly came from Muslim countries. So they're telling Iranian officials, why can't you be like other countries, Muslim countries? And Iran realized many years ago that the Israeli government is a fascist government. It's a racist government. This idea of greater Israel is something that dates back many years. And they realize that as long as you have the Zionists occupying Palestine, this part of the world cannot see peace. So they never bought into that idea that you reduce your support for Palestine and will get all the sanctions lifted, because this is what Americans have been telling Iranian officials for many years, that we get all the sanctions. These are the U.S. Congress's sanctions against Iran. We'll get all the sanctions lifted if you just do what other Muslim countries do. Iranians never accepted that. And one reason is because if you're claiming to be an Islamic republic, you cannot ignore the Palestinian cause. And secondly, you realize that even if you are not an Islamic republic, you're just an ordinary country, you cannot live in a region with fascists, genocidal people going on rampage whenever they want. Sooner or later, they're going to come after you. And this is what's happening. So if they get away with the plans they have, then they would want to do Greater Israel, take over Saudi territory, other countries that are not hostile to Israel, but they're not going to stop. This is the plan they have. And I think a lot of Muslims realize that all over the world. Trump has managed to unite Iranians more than any Iranian politician could ever do. We have this rally around the flag effect. People as I said, millions come out every night shouting against Trump and Netanyahu. So they have united Iranians against themselves.
Yeah, I've got a related question to this. So this is from our community. They've given me some questions. So they were asking, it's known that Iran has a very strong sentiment for the Palestinian cause. However, we have seen that it is only attacked Israel when Iran was attacked, not during the genocide. Why is that? This is a question
Not
from
true.
our community.
Not true. Not accurate. The missiles that Hamas have been using against Israel was either came from Iran or was Iranian design. Al Jazeera did an extensive story. It was the know-how of Iran that resulted in Hamas being able to produce these missiles. The extensive tunnels that Hamas had came from the experience that Iran had with the metro system that I told you. So doing that type of engineering requires knowledge that is available to countries, not organizations. Lebanese resistance, the same thing. Lebanese resistance is attacking Israel. The missiles they have either came from Iran or the technology and the ability to build these missiles came from Iran.
The reason they're asking this question is because for the 12 days war, Iran was really hammering Israel. And even now, if you look at what we see now, Israel is not showing all the stuff, all the attacks that's been, inflicted by Iran. And the question is, why did Iran wait so long? Why did they not start instead of having 70,000 Palestinians being killed? Why did they not attack and do what they're doing now?
We have this resistance front, as you know. It is the Palestinian organizations, Lebanese organizations, Yemen. The Yemenis didn't have the missiles that they're using against Israel. This is Iranian help. And the calculus here was that you need to preserve the headquarters. You need to make sure Iran is able to support these organizations. If Iran had gotten into war earlier, you would see this war instead of this month, you would have seen it 2 years ago, because Israelis have always wanted to attack Iran militarily. Iran did not want to give Israel that excuse because Iran needed to be able to survive so they can support the resistance organizations that were fighting Israel. And now that the Israelis have started attacking Iran, then there is no restriction in terms of, Iran is a member of the United Nations. What Iran is saying now is that Iran is responding to Israeli attacks following Article 51 of the UN Charter. Because if you're attacked, you have this self-defense doctrine.
Yeah.
If Iran had joined the fight against Israel officially in October of 2023, Iran could not claim that Iran is doing self-defense. That's one reason. The other reason that Iran needed to be able to function so they could support these organizations. So at the end of the day, as you know, Iran was preparing itself for today, for what you see today. And Iran needed the time to do that preparation. It's quite amazing that Iran has been able to survive after more than a month of bombardment, continuing to hit Israeli sites. So overall, I think the plan had justification. If Iran had joined the fight, Iranian officials did not know that you're going to have Hamas starting. Of course, when we say a start, they have been under occupation for many decades, so they are justified to fight back. But Iran did not know about October plans. And so the country realized that they are going to, sooner or later, be fighting Israelis directly. They needed some time to make sure that they can do that. And as you see, The planning is working. The plan is working.
So, does Iran have a vision to liberate Palestine?
Iran, more than 30 years ago, had this proposal. It's documented in UN documents. The Iranian representative gave that, codified that in UN documents. And what Iran said at that time, and Iran has repeated that, is that we need to have a one man, one vote system in Palestine. The same thing that happened in South Africa. Once South Africans, blacks, were able to vote, then the apartheid regime ended in South Africa. We need to repeat the experience in South Africa, in Palestine. And if Palestinians, so this is the one state solution, basically.
Yeah.
So if the Palestinians have the right to vote, Netanyahu will not be Israeli prime minister, because the Palestinian population would not vote for a genocidal maniac. The population in Palestine, the Muslim and Christian Arab population in Palestine, is bigger than the Zionist population since 2020. This is the result of Israeli intelligence services assessment. This was published in Haaretz. So for the last 6 years, the population of Palestinians is bigger. And one reason they wanted to do a genocide in Gaza was to reduce this population. And they killed a lot of people. But I don't think that has changed. So if we have one man, one vote system in Palestine, you would get an Arab, a Muslim Arab, that opposes apartheid as the prime minister of that part of the world, which will be called Palestine. And you will have a Nelson Mandela basically running that area. This was Iran's proposal more than 30 years ago. This is Iran's proposal today. And the hypocrisy that we have in Western governments, they say they support democracy, but when it comes to Palestine, they support apartheid instead of democracy.
Yeah. So, what are the key barriers preventing, excuse me, what are the key barriers preventing unity across the Muslim world today?
We shouldn't have this unity. We have common enemies. We have a common book, the Quran, the Holy Quran. We have a common prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. There are differences in jurisprudence, but this is not unique to one sect or another. In the Sunni school of thought, you have 4 major jurisprudence.
Yeah.
So those small differences should not cause the Muslims to disunite because of the situation that the Muslim community, Muslim Ummah has. The unity becomes very important. And we see what happens when there is disunity. The colonialists historically have used this idea of divide and rule, and they have worked to cause discord and disunity among Muslims so they can plunder their resources. And we should be aware enough not to let them to do this anymore.
I think previously you discussed the governments, the Muslim governments, neighboring countries like Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, how they've actually aided the Zionist state in terms of information fuel and whatnot. In terms of, I know there's a Muslim unity, which is Muslims are generally united, but it's actually the rulers who prevent any sort of unity, meaningful unity. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I think if you want to list countries, UAE is causing a lot of difficulties. They welcomed the Israeli president in the middle of genocide. and they're doing a lot of harm. Unfortunately, the Saudi government decided to join this fight against Iran. We have historically countries like Oman, like Qatar. They are not interested in these type of plans. Generally, they're okay. I think they had no other choice but to join, especially the Qataris, given the fact that the biggest U.S. base in the Persian Gulf actually is in Qatar. But the problem that these governments have is that they don't have even access to these bases. There are areas of these bases that non-U.S. citizens are not allowed to enter. So who knows what they are doing? The Qatari government certainly wouldn't know. And Turkey has been relatively okay in recent months. They are trying to mediate. Egypt has been relatively okay. Turkey, of course, is a NATO member. There are people here that think that the U.S. has used these NATO facilities in Turkey to attack Iran. But generally, the Turkish government has been helpful. And Iran was very careful not to have these other countries join the war. Netanyahu was successful in getting American soldiers to fight for Israel. He wants to get the Saudi soldiers, UAE soldiers to fight for Israel. I hope at least they don't do it officially.
Do you consider these governments, these rulers, to be the first line of defense for the Zionist state? So when they talk about the Iron Dome, this is like the rulers are the first line of defense. Would you consider that?
Their facilities is being used to alert Israelis when Iranian missiles are headed towards Tel Aviv and Haifa. We had Jordan that intercepted a lot of these missiles. They were basically shielding Israel.
Exactly.
Not a good idea, because if Israelis are successful, the first country that will suffer would be Jordan. They want to take over Jordanian territory. That's very much inside Greater Israel. They will take over Jordan, then they want to take a good portion of Iraq as well. So they will be moving east, and Jordan would be one of the first victims. The problem that exists is a lot of these countries are client states of the United States. The monarchies they have either don't want or cannot resist the pressure from the United States. And the end result is what you see. Instead of helping Iran, or at least watching, they're helping the other side. We saw 2 years of these governments, although they had a lot of capabilities, a lot of resources, they just watched the genocide. Iran didn't do that. Iran was helping the Palestinian resistance groups. These governments watched. So they're good at watching. That's what we know. But instead of watching, unfortunately, this time around, they're helping Israel and US in their attacks against Iran.
Yeah, brilliant. In terms of Trump says he wants to end this war as soon as possible. After the war, what kind of future do you see for the Middle East?
I don't think Trump is interested in ending the war. He is interested maybe in a ceasefire, but not even today, sometime in the next few days or few weeks. He may be interested in a ceasefire because all these anti-missile systems in Israel, they need to be recharged again. They have some military limitations. They need to take a break, basically. This is what the Israelis did with Gaza. They took a break every few months, and they want to do the same. They're interested in that. Trump is going to be president for the next 3 years. They want to disintegrate Iran, take over Iranian oil, and create an Israeli hegemony in the next 3 years. They have not given that up. And that policy will continue. The hope that Iran has is that this time the lesson that the Iranians would teach American and Israelis would make them think twice before attacking Iran again.
Okay. So could this conflict change the balance of power in the region, particularly in relation to Israel?
If Israelis are able to achieve their goal, they will push these Arab governments all they want. They will take over their land, and they will make them use their resources to help Israel. This is the plan that Israelis and Americans have. So Iran is fighting for Iran. Iran is fighting for Saudi Arabia and UAE and all these countries that are actually helping the other side. Unfortunately, these governments don't realize or don't want to realize that if Iran falls, then Turkey will be next, Saudi Arabia will be next, Pakistan.
They're discussing that. There was a couple of articles I was reading that, Pakistan, they're discussing Pakistan because it's got a nuclear weapon.
And you had the Indian Prime Minister going to Israel just before the war. I don't think that was an accident. I think they're planning something together, India and Israel, to target Pakistan. So Iran is fighting for Pakistan as well. Iran is fighting for the civilized world against the Epstein class.
This is another question from our community. So Trump has recently said that he will leave Iran soon. If so, will Iran continue its war with Israel?
Iran needs to make sure that Palestine is free, because as long as you have a genocidal regime taking that part of Palestinian land hostage, you are not going to see peace in this part of the world. They have access to nuclear weapons. They have access to American money and American weapons. Iran has been fighting Israelis for the last 47 years since the victory of the Islamic Revolution in 1979. That fight will continue. Of course, Iran's military has its own limitations. So Iranians need to plan carefully to make sure that they can continue to resist in a manner that would result in defeat of Israel, not defeat of Iran.
So just to clarify that Iran, if USA was to pull out, Iran will stop hitting Israel.
Iran.
I think that was the question. I think that was the question that they want,
Yes, for the long run, Iran will continue to fight Israel. In the short run, we have a lot of civilian infrastructure damaged. If one aim of attacking civilian infrastructure is to make Iranian people get tired. Iranians, all of them are not practicing Muslims, like Pakistanis. Not all Pakistanis are practicing Muslims. And some, if you're a practicing Muslim, then you can endure more resistance. But if you are not, you may get tired soon. And this is the aim they have. They want to create a population in Iran that is running out of patience, and maybe they can overthrow the Iranian government. They have not been successful. We had a coup in January, not successful. But they're not going to give up. So Iran has limitations of its population. They need to make sure that some level of service is given to this population for the segments that cannot exercise patience. And this is how they managed to survive for 47 years. It's not normal to be under this level of severe sanctions and military attacks and not only survive, but advance. Remember, the technology that Iran is using in its military is indigenous technology. Iran did not order these ballistic missiles from American or UK factories. They built it themselves. So in order to sustain that, they need to make sure that they plan accordingly.
Yeah, so you've touched on Pakistan. We recently had Ayatollah Mujtaba Khamenei call for brotherhood between Afghanistan and Pakistan. Will the Ayatollah also seek military deals with the Muslim countries in the ongoing war?
Both Pakistan and Afghanistan are Iran's neighbors. A war between Afghanistan and Pakistan is not a good idea. I don't think either side is welcoming that. Things have got out of hand. Since Iran has good relations with both sides, Iran is offering to see if Iran can help. and Iran's help is going to be better for both sides when you consider what India is planning, what some Western countries are planning. So Iran is trying to be helpful. Having cooperation with neighboring countries is important for Iran because the US and Israel want to isolate Iran, and they want to use Iran's neighbors to put pressure on Iran. They have been successful with UAE and Saudi Arabia, some of these countries. You don't want to be fighting with Pakistan and Afghanistan in the eastern borders of Iran the same way that Iran is defending itself against its southern borders. So Iran is trying to be
Will you be
helpful.
seeking any military deals with Pakistan, for example?
You know, Pakistan has nuclear weapons. They can sell nuclear weapons to Iran if things get out of hand. I think this is something that they can do. The only problem is that the Americans have a lot of influence in Pakistan. So do the Saudis. So whether that can actually happen or not, we don't know. But having military cooperation with Pakistan, I think, would be welcomed by Iranians. We are managing on our own right now, but we never know these genocidal people how long they want to continue this.
Okay, I just wanted to, I wanted to discuss the economy. Yeah? What has been the impact on the economy, and how are the Iranian people coping?
Not easy. You know, the access to food is still okay. Electricity is running. Water is so that the basic needs are there. But Iran has been under sanctions for 47 years. So the economy wasn't that great before the war. It's going to get worse and now. As I said, Iranians can exercise patience, but not everyone Iran has a population of over 90 million. Not everybody is going to be patient. So these are the limitations that the Iranian government has to make sure that the services that citizens need are provided at a level that cannot be misused by enemies like Israel and United States.
Okay, so prior to this war, we saw many riots in Iran. As you are interacting with the youth, what are their sentiment, and are they fully supporting the government now?
You know, the revolution happened 47 years ago. So I teach at University of Tehran. We are in contact with the students in their 20s and 30s. And some of these students were questioning why their parents and grandparents had the revolution because of the economic pressures. So they were asking maybe they could come up with some other idea, not to confront US in that manner. I can tell you that Trump has managed to turn a new generation of Iranians as anti-American as their parents and grandparents, because we don't have to explain anything, because they can hear American bombs falling on their universities. Everybody realizes attacking universities is against international law. So before, we had to talk about the history, we had to talk about the 1953 coup, we had to talk about the atrocities that the Shah had. You know, he stole $20 billion when he was leaving Iran.
That's right.
This is a Washington Post estimate. The article is still available online. $20 billion. And his son has been using that money to engage in these type of riots that you saw. We had Pahlavi people using U.S. Guns. Trump acknowledged that he has sent them guns, weapons, shooting at shop owners that refused to close their shops because Pahlavi had asked for a general strike. Some people did not want to listen to Pahlavi's demands, and they were shot in their shops in the manner that I just explained. And that money, it comes, the money, you see in UK, you have these Pahlavi people waving Israeli flags, welcoming an attack under country. Is that normal? These people get paid for coming to these demonstrations.
Yeah, that was one of the questions I wanted to ask you. That is there a support on the ground for Pahlavi? Because what we see from the Western media, we see a lot of like narrative, a lot of images, and a lot of discussion on how they want to change the government and how, they want the old Shah back.
I don't want to say the support is less than 1% because that would be too much. And after the continuation of Pahlavi's support for this war, how can you be the king of a country and welcome another country to attack your country? How can you be the king of that country? He was quite silent after we lost 165 little girls. And he sent condolences to the US soldiers that were killed because of this aggression. So when you just put yourself in the place of an Iranian sitting in Tehran under bombardment, and this man has no problem, his fellow countrymen getting killed under Israeli-American bombardments, and he's worried about the soldiers on the other side. So their support was less than 1%, and their support is even less now. People remember his father was a fascist, his grandfather was a fascist. He's working with fascists, he's working with Netanyahu. He visited occupied Palestine 2 times in the middle of genocide. And nobody respects him. And the people who go to his demonstrations actually do it for the money. I don't think even they respect him.
So are you saying, can I assume that the youth of Iran, they're more, not secular, but more Islamic, more pro-government? Would you say that that would be the true assessment?
The Muslim population in Iran is similar to Muslim population in other countries, in Turkey, in Pakistan. So you have some practicing Muslims, you have some people who don't practice Islam. The practicing Muslims in Iran generally support the government because this is an Islamic government. It's not 100% Islamic. Establishing an Islamic government under attacks and sanctions is not very easy. So there are some shortcomings here and there. But generally they support the government. And even the secular people in Iran, especially after this war, are realizing that it is this government that's defending the country. And the average IQ in Iran is no less than the international average. So people realize who Trump is, they realize who Netanyahu is. Nobody wants to be the foot soldiers of Trump and Netanyahu. So they understand what's going on. So even secular people in Iran are not interested in doing things that is in line with American and Israeli interests.
You just said the government is not fully 100% Islamic. What do you mean by that?
It means, we inherited in 1979, there was an Islamic revolution. So you had the leader of the country, the ministers, maybe the deputy ministers, but the system that Iran inherited was a monarchist system. Gradually, Iran tried to fix some of these problems that the new government inherited, and they did a good job. You look at the average age in 1979, it was 55 years. Now it's close to 80 years. So when you increase the average age by 20 years, that means better food, better medicine, better education, more access to hospitals. The number of university students, the number of female university students, the number of the services that the Iranian government has been able to provide under a lot of hardship is quite extensive. You look at, we have at the UN, we have this Human Development Index. Iran is either number 1 or number 2 internationally in terms of growth. That means that the pace of improvement in Iran under sanctions has been quite extensive. You have Iran and South Korea competing with each other in terms of HDI growth for the last 40 years. So Uh, and Iran has had successes. Iran has had failures. The U.S. Is good at propaganda. We have more than 200 Farsi channels propagating for the U.S. Some of them are based in UK. They're paid by Israelis, by Americans, by Saudis. They get financing, and propaganda can work, especially if they're targeted at towards a population that's under a lot of stress.
Yeah, you've raised the issue of propaganda. We've seen that the Western media, the Western governments, they're continuously attacking the concept of hijab and how the Iranian government is, oppressing the woman. But we see some of those images. There are women in Tehran who are not wearing hijab. So, is this propaganda from the West? And how are you dealing with this?
Yeah, Trump yesterday said that if someone is not properly dressed in Iran, they are shot at and they are killed. That's not accurate. You see the pictures of people who are not observing hijab and they are not shot at. They're just walking around. So that's a propaganda lie. This was in 1979. This was an Islamic revolution, and the idea was to implement Islamic teachings, and hijab is part of Islamic teachings. But throughout these 47 years, the other side has also worked a lot with regard to Iranian population, because they realize if they can get rid of Iran, then they can have total dominance in the Middle East. And some people have fallen for that propaganda. So we have had these issues. The government, especially in the last number of months, has decided to put that issue aside. So this is not something that they have too much on their plate already. So hopefully, once Iran becomes successful in its defense against these aggressions, these people also realize that observing hijab is good for females. It's not oppression. It's for their benefit.
Okay, so finally, what message would you want to share with the people in the West about how this war is being understood and perhaps misunderstood?
When you watch CNN or BBC or these Western media outlets, realize that they have an agenda. They want to demonize Iran so they can justify these type of wars. I used to get a lot in the early days of war. I used to get a lot of calls from BBC. The first one was live, and after that, they are not doing live interviews. They're doing recorded interviews because they don't want to hear the truth, because they want to justify these type of attacks against Iran. And this hypocrisy, too much hypocrisy. They were worried about the armed rioters in January, but they have no problem with ordinary citizens getting bombed every day. So this is very selective in terms of worrying about human rights in Iran. And it's very unfortunate. They are not telling the truth. The hope that we have is that the populations in these countries look at alternative media that is trying to present at least both sides of the story. Hear from Iranians inside Iran. They will tell you more accurate information. The other day I was reading BBC, and be careful, because they quoted somebody that said that, yes, we like to be attacked with nuclear weapons. And they said that this lady, so we just use some common sense. You cannot make a nation like you by bombing them. This is against human psychology. So if you hear things out of BBC that is against human psychology, just don't accept it. We need your prayers, whether you're Muslim or not, and we need your solidarity.
And finally, sorry, just wanted to say, how are you keeping safe? Because I know Dr. Marandi, there's a lot of social media posts saying that he's being targeted and stuff like that. How true is that?
We are having soldiers that know if they go on one of these launchers, the possibility of them getting killed, martyred, is 60-70%. And they're doing it anyway. this is quite strong. So for me, sitting in front of a laptop and talking to you, this is easy comparison to the sacrifices that we are witnessing in Iran today. So we are not worried about that. We are not worried about that at all.
Brilliant. Dr. Izadi, thank you so much for joining us and for such a thoughtful conversation. I really appreciate your time, and I hope we can talk again very soon. Please keep
Thanks.
safe.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.